2019 charity quilt-along called Threadology. From February 2019 to May 2019, we will be releasing 2 free block patterns. And in June, we will be releasing a finishing and a backing pattern for the quilt you see behind me. We are just asking for a donation to Make-A-Wish at the link below, and Moda Fabrics will be matching $10,000 and Fat Quarter Shop will be matching $10,000. So we totally appreciate any support you can give us. So block 3 is called Shooting Squares, and you are going to make one 12-inch block that is going to go on the back of your quilt, and you're going to be making 4 6-inch blocks. So let me show you how you make it. So when you're making the Threadology, you're going to have a 12-inch block and 4 6-inch blocks, and you're just going to follow your pattern, and it's going to be using the same techniques that I'm showing you here in 2 different sizes. So the first thing we're going to do is take all of our fabric A and C squares and cut them on the diagonal once. So when I do that, I just make sure the points are on the edge, and you just want to be really accurate with this cutting because this is part of the outside of your block. And then we're going to be using these triangles on the outside of the block. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what you need to do. You're just going to use a 1/4 inch seam, and you are going to pin at least 3 times here. Put right sides together and pin. When you start sewing, you will want to start from the square, the 90-degree angle, instead of the triangle point. That will give you more accurate results. And you're going to make 2 with the white on the left and 2 with the red on the left. I'm going to go ahead and piece them. They look just like this. So 2 like this and 2 like this, and you're going to press these open. Each of your shooting squares blocks has a 4 patch in the center, so you're just going to lay out your fabric B and D, and then I'm going to show you how to chain piece. So I'm going to put these 2 right sides together. I'm going to pin, since this is a square, I'm just going to pin in the bottom. I don't feel like I need a pin at the top. And I'm going to chain piece, so I've got a leader started. Then just grab your next part. Don't cut in the middle. I'm just using a 1/4 inch foot that came with my machine. I'm going to end with my scrap, cut it off, and then we're going to press. So these seams we're going to press open because we've got so many seams. It's the only way that things will nest. So I'm going to set my seam, and I always, when I press open, just press to one side to start with. Doesn't matter which side. Then I'm going to flip that open. Finger press this down. Sometimes if your iron is super hot, you gotta wait a little bit. I like to finger press it down and then iron over it. And I just set my iron right on top of it. If you're pressing open, you can use a slightly tighter stitch length, like a 1.8 or 1.7, you know, something shorter than what you normally would use. I'm going to leave this sewn together, and I'm going to pin this together. I'm just going to look and just make sure that everything is aligned right in that center. Pin once and then pin at the end, and then we're going to go ahead and sew this final seam for our 4 patch. So before I press, I'm just going to peek to make sure my seams nested and that they're lined up. Some people prefer to do that, some don't. It's totally up to you. But I made sure that that worked for the way I want it to look. Set my seam and press again to one side. Doesn't matter which side. Turn it over. Finger press it open. And then press it open. And in the center, we had this little piece, so we're gonna have to clip that. And I do use steam in my iron. Look on the other side, make sure it looks pretty, and now we can assemble the block. Now you're just gonna align your 4-patch with your outside triangle pairs, and you're just gonna make sure it's red, white, etc., etc. So these two, I'm gonna sew 2 at a time. So the first thing I'm gonna do is put these right sides together, pin the centers, making sure that my seams are together. Pin on each side. You're going to have excess hanging off, and that is okay. You want to just leave that there, and we will talk about that right after we stitch. So we've got 3 pins there. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and we're just going to stitch each side with a 1/4 inch seam. So on this, you don't need a leader because you've got a little bit of fabric there, so I'm not going to use a leader or ender on these. I'm going to sew. I'm not going to pull my pins out until I get right to it. But I do not sew over my pins. Do the other side, and then we will press. So now we are going to actually set our seam and press to the outside instead of open. And here I do make sure my points match. Some people care, some people don't. Totally up to you. These are bias edges, so you want to make sure that you're not pushing your iron too much. You just want to press right on that edge. Let your iron sit. And then I'm going to trim off these little dog ears. You can just use scissors to do that. You don't need to use a rotary cutter. And then we are going to add the other side triangles just like we did before. Pin, and then we're going to stitch. So we have our shooting squares block done. I'm going to set my seams and press to the outside, and my points are lining up, so that makes me really happy. They don't always. Usually on camera they don't, just to jinx me. Okay, so this is how the block looks, and we made the triangles oversized so that we can trim this down. And when we trim it down, we're getting a perfect block without having to be so perfect when we're stitching. So I like to use Creative Grid's 12.5 inch square ruler. And there are white lines in the center, which is your square. So I want that white line to touch the top and bottom and the sides, and then I want to be about a 1/4 inch away on each side, and then I want this center to hit the center. So also you want your point, you want your outside points to match. You might have to move stuff a little bit like I'm doing right now. So we've got all that lined up, and I am going to cut around all 4 sides and try not to move my ruler. And I do cut towards myself. Some of you guys don't. Do whatever works for you. And so I love that this block comes out perfect the way we wrote it so that you could trim down. I hope you enjoyed making your shooting squares blocks. You're gonna have 5 total blocks. Make sure to check out the giveaway for this week and tune in 2 weeks for block 4. See you then.